Hey, welcome. My name is Bobby Bennett. I'm the creative director here at Union Chapel. And today I have the privilege of coming out from behind the camera to actually get to teach on today's section. So we're in Leviticus, Numbers, Psalms. Before we actually dive into any of that, I want to jump into the New Testament. So let's fast forward to about 30 AD when a carpenter's son in his 30s emerges from obscurity within his hometown, Nazareth, stepping up to the plate during his church service to read from one of the scrolls from Isaiah. So Jesus, we find him here in Luke 4:16 through 21, and this is what it reads. He went to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and on the Sabbath day he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. He began by saying to them, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." Coming out of the gate to the people that he grew up with in his hometown, this is how he chooses to reveal himself and what he's here for. He's here for the sake of freedom. Freedom from imprisonment, freedom from blindness, freedom from oppression. And there's this unique loaded phrase in the reading from Isaiah, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus does something interesting, which is not uncommon for him. He makes what seems to be an intentional decision to stop reading where most people would assume he would keep reading. And so what his audience was probably expecting to hear was this: to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God. Coincidence? Or is the Son of God, with his silence, making a statement about the heart of God and what it has always been? Now, in the Old Testament, the battle is often between flesh. It's for the promised land, it's material, it's visible, it's covenants promising descendants greater than the grains of sand on the beach, promises a blessing that would overflow to all nations. The story of God was grounded in a fight for what could be seen. And so you might read about God in like Psalm 5, "You hate all who do wrong. You destroy those who tell lies." Going to Psalm 11, "But the wicked, those who love violence, he hates with a passion." And then in the psalm that we're going to read today, Psalm 73, "Those who are far from you will perish. You destroy all who are unfaithful to you." Then by the time we arrive at Jesus, we find the friend of sinners, mocked by the religious experts of the day because of his associating with prostitutes, tax collectors, and the wicked. The Son of God draws near to those that the God of Abraham and Jacob and Isaac is said to hate. And it can leave me wondering at times, maybe it leaves you wondering, how does the Old Testament and the New Testament connect? Is this the same God? I believe it is, but there seems to be a contrast here. And so for all the brutality that's found in the Old Testament, that not only seems like an affront to modern sensibilities, but is in contradiction to the heart of Jesus, whose ethic greatly formed our Western modern sensibilities, I do believe that if we're paying attention, we will find the groaning throughout the full collection of Scripture for freedom from sin itself and not just from those who are sinners. In other words, as the story develops, as Revelation finds its revealing, as prophecy comes into focus, it is clear that God is not and has not simply been concerned with dealing with those who are wicked, but with wickedness itself. As we heard from Jesus' chosen reading from Isaiah, from the beginning, God is concerned with freedom. And as it becomes clear, freedom from all sin that leads to death. So an example of this kind of expectation that we do find in the Old Testament, this groaning, this expectation for freedom from something deeper, we find that actually in Jesus' reading of Isaiah, which references our reading in Leviticus. So when Jesus says the year of the Lord's favor, his audience would likely have thought of the year of Jubilee that we find in Leviticus 25. So let's go ahead and turn to Leviticus 25 just to get a little glimpse of what that looks like. In 25:10, it reads, "Consecrate the 50th year and proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan. The 50th year shall be a jubilee for you. Do not sow and do not reap what grows of itself or harvest the untended vines, for it is a jubilee and is to be holy for you. Eat only what is taken directly from the fields." So that's just a taste of the kind of things that are prescribed for the year of Jubilee, which will also find the freedom of slaves, the restoration of property, rest for the land, And it's basically this giant reset against the entropy of life. And what's interesting is in every skeptic's favorite book of the Bible to pick on for proof of it being out of date and oppressive and clearly man-made, we find a system that's more radically generous, freeing, and costly than would ever enter the modern imaginations of any political party or movement. And it's all based on this idea. When we get to Leviticus 25, verses 23, it reads, "The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Whatever we have earned, or labored for, or suffered for, or dreamt of, or passed down in the family," this is what God's clearly saying, is it all belongs to him. How does that idea find you today? Is that a good idea? Is that good news? Is that merciful? Does that sound like freedom to you? As we'll explore here in a minute, I believe the idea that God owns everything is the foundation for our freedom. One of the things I've come to appreciate about Leviticus is that it shows that a relational God of love offers clarity for the sake of unity for his people. Whether they liked it or not, God's people knew what to expect of each other and of themselves. Life was clearly defined. And while the more I learn about church history, and the more I really do appreciate being a Protestant, I do feel a friction, especially within the non-denominational vein, that we can lack an available clarity for unity. Perhaps we've been freed from the suffocating burden of like man-made traditions, Jesus plus nothing. But for many of us, I think when we approach just everyday questions of like, is it okay to live with your significant other before marriage? What about human sexuality? What does the church have to say about that? And then there are other more church-related questions of how old do you have to be to get baptized? What do you have to believe? Are the gifts of the Spirit still something for us today? Can we speak in tongues and heal and prophesy? Are women allowed to be in leadership in the church? These are all things that often are at the mercy of building an answer from the ground up based on our own opinions and interpretations of Scripture, or deferring to the opinions of our favorite authors or pastor who we carefully church shop for. But in more ancient expressions of the faith, like Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, you could find readily available answers across the board. You may not like them, but at least you weren't swallowing the bitter pill alone or creating a false god based off of your own preferences. So personally, there is something refreshing in Leviticus. It answers questions people left to their own devices would be asking anyways, on how to live life, how to administer justice, on how to worship. And as we see with the year of Jubilee, God builds intangible, visible, prophetic rhythms into the life of his people that point to something bigger. For anyone who would like to write off Leviticus as an obvious example of a man-made book, how do you explain something as counterintuitive and as costly an idea of the year of Jubilee? Where did that come from? But as tempting as it would be to join many right now in our culture who are romanticizing the structure and the rules and the clarity that perhaps feel like the key to what's lacking in the evangelical church's witness, what becomes clear in Scripture is that clarity does not fix things. The year of Jubilee was so radical an idea that even scholars debate whether the Israelite people ever honored it. For those who do argue for it, even then it seems inconsistent and short-lived. And so at the end of the day, what we'll find is the diagnosis of the human condition throughout the entire Old Testament and its witness of the endless cycle of disobedience is that clarity does not lead to obedience. Clarity does not guarantee unity. There's something deeper within us that must be addressed. While laws and rules and traditions can be great tools to serve human society, they alone are not the antidote to the human heart's greatest need. So I believe this is why Jesus chooses to reveal his purpose to his hometown through the lens of liberation, through mercy and not vengeance. For as Scripture is clear, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. If the day of vengeance is what is to come, who will survive it? Now, earlier I said that the foundation to our freedom is found on this idea that God owns everything. As we wrap up, let's explore that further in Psalm 73. The psalmist writes, "But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold. For I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." As we're in the midst of the One Initiative, and we would have just wrapped up our Commitment Sunday a couple weeks ago, my hope is that there's been a lot of joy and excitement, expectation, hope, sense of risk-taking and adventure. But I can imagine that a lot of people have also felt some sense of guilt or uncertainty or shame about what they feel like they can versus what they should be able to give. Maybe a sense of like emotional strong-arming. Our hope is that that's not the case, but we know with just so many people involved and with asking for money, that comes with it. And I just want to personally share, being on staff, being who I am, my wife and I haven't made a commitment yet as of the filming of this video because we've still got a few more weeks until then. I tend to have an overactive sense of guilt. I'm getting better at it, but I can worry about missing out on something or not doing the right thing because I'll get in trouble or how it'll look to others. And a lot of the time, I can kind of miss doing things for the sake of actually loving God and loving others and more out of like a sense of self-protection. So I know those are things I have to look out for. So I think it's possible that many of us who are making financial sacrifices will echo the feelings of the psalmist, a sense of comparison, of wondering if this is all worth it. And so the psalmist goes on. He writes, "Surely in vain I have kept my heart pure and have washed my hands in innocence. All day long I have been afflicted, and every morning brings new punishments." Hopefully that's not how you're feeling, but maybe someone is. But how does the psalmist resolve this? Well, going on in verses 16 through 17, we begin to find a silver lining. He writes, "When I tried to understand all this, it troubled me deeply till I entered the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their final destiny." So first of all, peace and understanding for the psalmist begins when they enter the sanctuary of God. And this isn't like a physical space. This isn't coming into church. I believe he is speaking of that hidden place that all of us can go to. You know, when you're driving to work, when you get up early in the morning, when you go to bed, that place where you can get removed from all the noise of the world. And it's just between you and your Creator. And this is what he finally realizes. "Whom have I in heaven but you? And earth has nothing I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." We hear a similar echo of this from the year of Jubilee, that God owns it all, that we are foreigners and strangers here. And that's good news. It's mercy. It is freedom. And I've come to love the book of Hebrews, which picks up this thread hundreds of years later. In Hebrews 11, it writes, "All these people were still living by faith when they died." And he's referencing the people that we're reading about right now in the Old Testament. "That they did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth." People who say such things show that they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of the country that they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. To put it this way, we will experience true freedom when we believe and trust that God owns everything, because it means that we don't have to. Looking back to Genesis in the Garden of Eden, where it all began, the heart of sin was given into the temptation to seize something we believe that God refused to provide. Therefore, being saved from sin is the reverse of that. It's being saved from a life of trying to seize what was never our burden to own. I love this quote from Jim Elliot, who gave his life as he was trying to reach the people in Ecuador. And this is what he said: "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." Jesus says it in a really similar way. "For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." We have been saved for a life finally free to give generously and radically, to love him through loving others. And we can take risks we couldn't afford before. We can be released of worrying about a future that's no longer ours to guarantee. And so by the end of all this, by the end of the One Initiative, I hope you're asking this question: who will I become? Who as a church will we become? Hopefully we're going to look different. Hopefully we're not just the same. Hopefully we're better on the other side of this. But man, it would be really sad if at some point through those new doors of the new campus, people are coming through for the first time. And they're amazed and they're impressed at the new windows and the lighting and all the details, the paint, all the design. And as their eyes start to go down from looking at all the newness and they just see us, what if they saw something that wasn't so new? Instead, they could kind of see under the surface that there was embitterment, there was just exhaustion. There's a sense that like something's been lost in the journey to get us to this point. And how sad would it be that out of all this, we got a new campus, but we lost ourselves along the way? Now, I don't think that would really happen, but it's not going to not happen by accident. We have to be intentional. And so imagine this instead, that as people are walking through for the first time to the new doors, they're looking up and they notice all the design and the windows and the lighting and all the details. But as they come eye to eye, face to face with us, what they actually are most impressed with is not a new building, but by the faith and the love and the hope that they find in the people who built the building. And that far more attractive than a new campus or a new building, people will be attracted to the depth of faith that they find in the people who renovated and built out that campus for the sake that others might experience that as well. So just consider, how can the One Initiative be a chance to become someone who is more free? That we would join the psalmist in coming into that inner sanctuary, that hidden place, where regardless of what anyone else says, what pastor says, what someone like me says, that between you and God, you can say that, "Lord, you're all that I need. And now I'm free to give generously, however you're calling me. I don't need to give more than you're calling me to try to prove something. I don't need to give less to try to save myself. I can give what you're calling me to. I can take risk with you alongside others in this really unique chapter of our church. Maybe someday when someone new walks through the doors and they ask you, like, why did you guys do all this? And you can sincerely, honestly answer, we did it because we love God and because we love you. And they'll believe you because they will see that there's actual faith and hope and freedom that's been refined and built through this season over the next 2 years. And so that's my hope, that we are more concerned with who we're becoming, and that the One Initiative really is a discipleship movement, not just a building campaign, that will grow us into the kind of people that actually attract people, not just to come to the new campus, but to stay here. We're now going to go to a time of discussion, and I hope you enjoy your time. Thanks so much.